2006. Back when Oblivion made us completely lose ourselves in another world. We spent countless hours wandering the stunning landscapes, exploring the cities, and getting lost in the stories. The world felt alive, and each city had its own charm, its own secrets. But does it still hold up today? It's been 19 years since we first set foot in Cyrodiil, and I can't help but feel a wave of nostalgia. Many years have passed since I last played it, but the memories are still so vivid. When I hear Oblivion's music, I'm instantly transported back to my childhood, eagerly waiting for the next day to explore even more of that beautiful world. The feelings it evoked are hard to put into words, and it made me wonder, how would it feel to visit those cities again? Have they aged well? Do they still bring out the same magic? So let's take a walk down memory lane and revisit the cities that made Oblivion unforgettable. Let's see if they still have that spark. Ready to take the trip? Let's go! First up is Anvil, a beautiful port city and the westernmost in Cyrodiil. It has a charm that makes it stand out. It feels like the perfect place to chill, doesn't it? Stepping inside, Anvil is one of the easiest cities to walk around. A single main road runs right through the city and all the buildings line up along it, so getting lost here is pretty much impossible. And speaking of those buildings, the architecture here is something special. I've always loved stone and wooden houses, but Anvil's light-colored stone accented with sea elements like doors, railings and rounded roofs has its own distinct charm. The warm brick-colored rooftops add a bit of contrast. The style perfectly fits the coastal vibe. What really stands out are the windows. There are so many of them, making interiors very bright and warm. And those rounded sections of the buildings, they make the houses feel just as interesting inside as they are outside. Walking through Anvis is a cozy experience with trees, a peaceful pond and the sounds of seagulls. I also love the lanterns that light up the city at night. What strikes me now is how the city feels a bit empty, but honestly, it's not just Anvil, it's all cities in Cyrodiil. As a kid, I always had the impression that they were full of life. But now, after playing other games like Skyrim, it's pretty noticeable. But hey, Oblivion came out in 2006, so it's obvious it can't be as technologically advanced as more recent games. Still, it looks pretty great to me in 2025, and I'd gladly play it again. But don't get me wrong, even though I don't care that much about high quality graphics, I'm still excited about the remakes, Oblivion and the one from Bethesda. How about you? The chapel here is grand, with beautiful gothic style. The stained glass looks especially cool inside during a sunset, as the colors are amazing. Yeah, maybe not here, since the chapel is destroyed. But let's check out the one in Leyawen. It's got the same layout inside, just without the extra touches. Oh, and there's a small cemetery near Anvil's chapel. Now, let's get to the docks. I really like the overall look here. The buildings are a bit different, wooden with the same brick-colored roofs, but I noticed something odd. The windows are completely shattered. I checked inside and it's pretty dark, with light coming only from candles and fire. I really like how the interiors match the exterior. In an older game, I wouldn't be surprised if the light was just coming from the windows, even though they're shattered outside. But now I'm wondering why the windows are shattered. It's such a waste, especially with this beautiful sea view. Maybe the people are preparing for a storm. I even wonder if I ever noticed that when I was a kid, but I guess I probably didn't. Have you ever thought about it? The ships here are stunning, and then there's the lighthouse, which makes the place even more interesting. I even spotted a woman painting it. Such a nice detail. Finally, there's the castle. I love how it sits on its own island, reachable only by bridge. The architecture is striking, with tall towers, a grand courtyard and beautiful gothic arches. This castle is one of the best in the game. It really looks like a castle, not just a wider wall like in some other cities. Anvil has always been one of my favorite cities in Oblivion. Something about it just sticks with you. The colors, the peacefulness, the warmth of the place. Even after all these years, it still feels special. Next up, let's talk about Cyrodiil. The city is nestled near the mountains and surrounded by forests, which looks pretty awesome. Even from the outside, you can see that the architecture is completely different from Anvil's. It's so cool that each city has its own unique vibe instead of feeling like they're all copy-pasted. Cyrodiil's architecture is probably my favorite of all the cities. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of houses with wood and stone elements, and this city has tons of that. The steep roofs and rounded parts that look like mini towers make the houses stand out so much. You can really feel that European vibe, specifically half-timbered Tudor style. Here are some real-life buildings that resemble it. Pretty cool, right? The windows here also have these fancy grids that add even more character. The inside of the houses is nice, But you know what I noticed? The basements. Yeah, the basements, but not just here, all across Oblivion. I used to grab stuff to make potions when I was a kid, since the basements were always full of ingredients. And you know what? Anything that wasn't useful, I could always sell later in Bruma. Revisiting all those places after so many years brings back the feelings I had as a kid, but at the same time, it feels like a different lifetime. I'm getting old. Let's just go back to the city. The water and bridges give it such a peaceful vibe. It looks beautiful too. Oh, and there's this chapel that looks like the one in Anvil. It would be nice to see a different style, but hey, I'm a fan of the gothic look, so it's all good. Inside the city, there is this awesome door. It's the entrance to the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary. It brings back so many great memories. The Dark Brotherhood is definitely one of my favorite guilds, right up there with the Thieves Guild. So yeah, Cyrodiil Hall is a special place for me. And of course, we can't forget the castle. I'll be honest though, the castle here isn't as impressive as the one in Anvil. The towers are nice, but the whole building kind of looks like a wider wall. The courtyard isn't particularly interesting, just some trees. Compared to Anvil's castle, it feels kind of boring. But hey, Cyrodiil Hall is still one of my favorite cities. I totally love the architecture here, and of course, the Dark Brotherhood connection is a big plus. Now, let's see Leyawiin. The city is located way down south, surrounded by mountains, forests, and rivers, with easy access to the sea. What I really like about it is how many trees and plants there are, even inside the city. You can find spots with nothing but trees, statues, and ponds, perfect little chill spots. It would be nice if there were benches to sit on, but hey, the grass works just fine too. The architecture here is pretty simple. The houses have wooden elements and they come in different colors, which is unique to this city. The ivy growing on some of the houses really adds a nice touch. When I walk around, everything feels neat and well organized. There is this old European vibe to it, like most of the cities in Oblivion. One thing that stands out though is how the colors aren't super vibrant, not just here but overall in Oblivion. It's a bit gloomy actually, but I think it reflects reality better than some newer games with all their bright and flashy colors. I wish our cities could look like that, and I don't mean literally the same architecture, but something consistent. No random trash, no ancient ruins next to brand new skyscrapers. You know what I mean? I know it's probably impossible to keep everything in one style, but it might look better. Anyway, most of the houses are pretty big, but there's also an area with smaller ones. It's interesting because in the previous cities, all the houses looked expensive, but here we can clearly see some divisions. I checked out a few of the bigger houses and they look really nice. Lots of light inside, which I love. Some even have interesting pets. The smaller houses are more modest, but still super nice and clean with plenty of light.
Break the law on my watch, will you? I'll be confiscating your stolen goods. Oh, and no gold to pay your fine, It's off to the lockup then.
But check that out. This is actually what I was talking about at Anvil's docks. Most of the windows are either shuttered or bricked up, but inside all the windows let in the light. So I guess the interiors don't always match the exteriors. The city also has a chapel and a small cemetery. At night, the city is lit up by small torches, which give it a cozy vibe. They're the same as the ones in Cyrodiil Hall. The city also has a castle and it's also not striking as the one in Cyrodiil Hall. Still, I really like this city. The surroundings are beautiful with all the trees, water and even a little island. The place just feels safe and quiet. Definitely a great place to live. Alright, let's talk about Skiing Rod. This city feels pretty big. Probably the largest one after the Imperial City, of course. It's often foggy here, which gives it a cool, mysterious vibe. The buildings are massive and made of stone, and I'm really into the balconies here. They're actually spacious and usable, unlike the ones in Anvil that are only for decoration. The buildings are packed tightly together, which makes walking around feel kind of unique. But I do wonder if over time, the fog and the tall buildings blocking the light would start to make it feel a bit depressing to live here. Some of the houses have backyards, which is cool. You'll find things like a forge, a shed, or even a spot that might be used for making juice or maybe wine, not sure. It's different from other cities, where houses don't have their own outdoor space. There are also a few places with trees where you can relax, but it's not quite as green as some of the others. The city is split into two sections. The one we've already seen, and the second one with a chapel and more houses. It's nice how the cities have totally different structures. The cemetery is near the chapel as always and looks nice with those red trees. And then there is the castle. It's really impressive. It sits on a hill with a huge bridge leading to it. Honestly, it's probably the most interesting castle I've seen, at least on the outside. The courtyard's got this nice well, arches and covered passages that give it a real castle feel. And that's the whole city. Skingrad is definitely a unique and great place. Next up is Bravil. This city is completely surrounded by water and dense forest, which gives it a really cozy and natural feel. I love the small wooden bridge leading to the entrance, and it's the only way in. Once inside, you can tell right away that people here really love nature. There are quite a few trees around, and the buildings are all made of wood, of course except for the chimneys. The houses are pretty tall, but they're not just for one family. If you look closely, you'll notice that each one has outside stairs leading to a separate living space. So each building has two parts. A lower section with 2 floors and an upper section with 1 floor, or sometimes even an additional sleeping loft. Some houses are connected by tiny wooden bridges, which is a nice little detail. I also really like the lanterns here. They fit the style perfectly. Pretty much everything is made of wood, even the fence around the cemetery. Unfortunately, the chapel looks the same as in other cities. Imagine how awesome it would be to see one built entirely from wood. It would fit the whole aesthetic so much better, don't you think? The whole city kind of reminds me of Falkreath from Skyrim. The architecture is different, of course, but both have that wooden forested vibe with trees inside and outside the city. As for the castle, well, it has a big courtyard with some trees, but nothing too interesting. Honestly, the castle itself doesn't really stand out, at least in my opinion. Just out of curiosity, I checked the interior and it's really dark. No windows. It's a really stronghold, which makes sense for a king's residence. Security should be important, but I definitely wouldn't want to live here in this darkness. By the way, all castles in Oblivion look pretty similar inside. The ones in Skyrim are probably more interesting to explore. Alright, let's talk about Kavach. And yeah, there is not much to see here for obvious reasons. The city is completely destroyed. But still, I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate the atmosphere. And finally, we've made it to the coldest place in Cyrodiil, Bruma, the city closest to Skyrim. It sits up in the mountains with a pretty nice view of the Imperial City. Bruma's layout feels a bit different from other cities. The chapel is almost right in the center, surrounded by houses. The city itself isn't too big and it's super easy to walk around. I've got to say, I absolutely love the buildings here. They've got that sturdy mix of stone at the bottom and wood on top, and the carved details on the doors and locks give them so much character. Even some of the windows have an interesting shape that makes them stand out. The buildings are packed pretty close together, and there aren't many trees around, which adds to the whole rugged Nordic vibe. As a kid, I totally loved Bruma, mainly because of my favorite merchant Ongar. I'd come here all the time, and well, let's just say I was a very active member of the Thieves Guild in Oblivion. Bruma was always the perfect place to do my chores, as I could sell all the goods quickly after my job was done. So I was always visiting all the houses here. There is one house I still remember. Jagasta's place. I found a set of Dark Brotherhood robes there, and for some reason that moment stuck with me more than most of the actual quests in the game, even though the quests here are really interesting. No idea why it was so exciting, but it's funny how little details like that stick in your memory. And finally, there's the castle, but honestly, it's not that different from some of the others, so not much to talk about. I also noticed that the city doesn't have a cemetery, which is quite surprising since all the other cities do. What do you think about Bruma? Did you visit Ongar as much as I did? Alright, next up the Imperial City, right at the heart of Cyrodiil. This place is massive, split into several districts. Ever notice how its design feels familiar? A round city divided into sectors with a huge central tower. It totally gives me Midgar from Final Fantasy VII vibes. What do you think? The buildings across all districts have the same style. Huge stone structures, mostly apartments rather than individual houses. They're packed closely together with just a few yards in between. You could probably have a full conversation with your neighbor just by leaning out the window. The interiors are spacious but feel kind of empty, so it doesn't really have a cozy vibe to me. The city definitely feels more alive though, since I saw more people just walking around. Let's take a quick walk through the districts. The temple district is pretty straightforward. There's a big temple in the center, buildings around it, and that's about it. Nothing too exciting. Talos Plaza is another cluster of tightly packed buildings, but at least it has that cool dragon statue in the middle. Then there's Elven Gardens, which has more plants, but honestly, with a name like that, I was expecting something a bit greener here. The market district is similar in style, but it has some small green yards and of course plenty of shops. Arboretum though is a really nice change. It's basically a fancy park with statues, trees, different plants and walking paths. Finally, some green space. Now, arena district. I really like this one. The arena itself has a unique design with a lot of wooden elements, which is always a big plus for me. The area around it is nice too, with trees, statues and even some water with lilies. And of course the arena brings back memories. I spent a lot of time fighting here. At the heart of the city is the palace district where the white god tower stands. It looks impressive, but the whole place feels kind of sad with all the graves scattered around. There are so many of them. Outside the city walls there are 3 more sections. The waterfront is a pretty nice area with a lighthouse and ships, and one of them is actually a tavern. That's such a great touch, and the atmosphere inside is just awesome. Arcane University looks nice too. I really like the space here with the columns, trees and plants. Plus, the outdoor lecture area is a cool idea. And then there is the prison district, which honestly doesn't look too interesting. And that's the whole city. It's huge, and while the architecture isn't exactly my style, I still love it here. Mainly because of all the memories, especially those wanted posters of the Grey Fox everywhere. The Thieves Guild is one of my favorites along with the Dark Brotherhood, which I already talked about in Cyrodiil Hall. So what do you think of the Imperial City? Did you spend a lot of time here too? And finally, let's take a look at Coral. Like most cities, it's surrounded by forests and mountains, which already gives it a pretty scenic vibe. The architecture here is kind of similar to Cyrodiil Hall's. Stone foundations with wooden elements, but without the fancy shapes or those purple roofs. The interiors have a warm cozy feel, and thanks to all the windows, they're really bright too. Honestly, the whole city gives off a peaceful and welcoming atmosphere, which I really like. One thing that caught my eye though is this area with small houses, kind of like the ones in Leyawen. But here they look a lot worse. The tiny windows are completely shut, making the interiors super dark. It just feels a bit depressing. Aside from that, there's the castle, which doesn't really stand out, but the courtyard is a nice touch. It's not just an empty space with a few trees or plain grass. It actually has some character, giving the place a bit more charm. And that's the whole city. What do you think of Coral? So, we've visited all the cities in Oblivion. Do you feel as nostalgic after this trip as I do? Which city is your favorite and why? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, thanks for watching.